Rain hammered Lagos like a million tiny drums the night Ben hit the floor. His penthouse windows, 30 stories above Victoria Island, were a wall of black glass trembling under thunder. The city lights smeared in the wet, yellow and white threads running along Ozumbambadu Road, curving toward the Lekki Ikoyi Link Bridge. Inside, the air smelled like stale champagne, crushed hibiscus from a toppled centerpiece, and something sharp and bitter from the pills scattered across a Persian rug. Ben's pupils were wide. His breath came in ragged rips. The young billionaire, the one business blogs called the Lagos Meteor, could not lift his head. On the giant TV, a muted news ticker flashed, Odum Industries stock in free fall. That was his company. His name. Stay down, a cool voice said. Naomi stood over him in an emerald evening dress that clung to her like a secret. Her braids, long and sleek, were pinned back with gold hair combs. The storm threw light across her face, carving out her cheekbones, making her eyes look darker than night. Her hand, steady and practiced, slid Ben's phone into her clutch. He tried to reach for it. His fingers failed him. You weren't supposed to take that much, she added, not kindly, not cruelly, like a doctor reading a chart. But the cameras in the hall are rolling and the police will be here in 3 minutes. They'll find everything they need. Ben's mind stuttered. Cameras, police, pills. He felt the carpet under his nails. He tasted copper at the back of his throat. Naomi, he whispered, voice breaking, why are you doing this? Her lips gave a small smile. Not happy, not sad, just finished. For the people who made you, she said. And the people who will bury you. Lightning flared. The penthouse intercom buzzed with a harsh tone. Someone pounded the door. Open up. Lagos police. Ben tried to stand. His knees buckled. He caught the arm of a chair and dragged himself up. The city blurred and sharpened like waves. He blinked hard. In the mirror behind the bar, he looked like a ghost of himself. Beard untrimmed, eyes red, a once perfect tuxedo shirt wrinkled and stained with sweat. He remembered the boy he had been at 19, coding in his mother's kitchen in Yaba, fingers bright with hope. He remembered the man at 25 who closed a deal that shook the island, who bought his parents a house in Ikeja and told them, it was all worth it. He remembered the day he married Naomi on a lawn in Eco Atlantic while a drone wrote Ben plus Naomi in the sky with lights like stars. The memories didn't hold. They slipped away like fish through a net with too many holes. Naomi, he tried again, what did they promise you? Enough, she said. More than you ever gave me. A digital chime sounded from her clutch. She glanced at it and allowed the smallest nod, like a soldier receiving orders. The intercom buzzed again. The pounding grew louder. Mr. Odum. The voice was urgent now. We have a warrant. Open this door. Naomi leaned down and spoke as if placing a seal on an envelope. This is what happens to men who forget who raised them, who think they can climb alone. He heard the word raised and thought of two men. His father, Pastor Odum, who preached in a square church painted the color of mango, and his father's oldest friend and business partner, Deo Akant, who had taught Ben how to tie a tie and how to smile at a room full of sharks without showing fear. Uncle Deo, they had called him. Naomi was Deo's daughter. His associate's daughter. His wife. Another thunder crack. The door shook under a kick. Count to 5 before you answer, Naomi said and walked toward the bedroom. She didn't look back. She didn't rush. She moved like someone closing a file. The bedroom door whispered shut. Ben staggered to the marble counter. The pills glowed on the rug like white seeds after Harmattan wind shakes a tree. He grabbed the sink, splashed his face with cold water, and sucked air until the room steadied by a thread. The intercom bleated again. He saw, at last, the small security camera red dot above the foyer, blinking. He pulled open a drawer. No gun. Thank God. He found a tattered leather wallet where he used to keep nothing but business cards and cash for drivers. Now it held a photo of Naomi taken in Balagan Market, laughing with a bag of peppers in one hand and a basket of tomatoes in the other. For months he had told himself the laughter was real. He had forced himself to believe it. He slid the photo back, his hands shaking. Mr. Odum. Last warning. He looked at the door. Looked at the pills. Looked at the bedroom where Naomi had vanished. An idea, small and bright, flashed. He lurched to the dining table where the wedding album lay half open. Someone had been looking at it. He flipped the pages. In the seams he found a slim metal key he had not seen in years, the key to a safe hidden behind the bookshelf. He dragged himself to the shelf. Slid a row of business books aside. The panel clicked. He opened the safe with fumbling hands. Inside sat old hard drives, a stack of documents, and a phone. His first startup phone, the one he had retired the week he married Naomi because she said, "Start fresh with me." He powered it on. The screen bloomed with life like a stubborn plant. Messages poured in. He scrolled with dizzy focus. There, weeks before the wedding, an unsent draft addressed to himself. If anything goes wrong, look at Deo's shell companies. Find Naomi's travel history. Check the warehouse in Apapa. Container yards. Ship horns. Diesel. He remembered a meeting in that maze of metal and fog, the only time Naomi had insisted on coming along. She had pressed his arm and said she liked the smell of rain on steel. He had laughed. The memory tasted different now. Another message, this one new. He blinked. It was a photo from earlier tonight, time-stamped, taken from his own living room camera angle, his body on the floor, Naomi standing over him. Under it, a caption from an unknown number, Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 at dawn. He knew that voice without the number. He could hear it in his head. Uncle Deo's dry, calm baritone, always finish what you start. Leave no loose ends. Ben pressed the phone to his ear, heart pounding. Dialed the only person he still trusted at this hour. Malik, his childhood friend, now a data engineer who still called him Benji when no one else could. The call failed. He tried again. Busy. He typed a message with clumsy thumbs. Malik, they're inside my house. Naomi and Deo. I need out. If I vanish, Apapa warehouse number 19. Cameras planted. Password, bridge 31. A boot cracked the doorframe. Wood splintered like bone. Ben sent the message and slid the phone into his waistband. He scooped 3 pills from the rug and flushed them, watched them spin down, a small act of war. He walked to the entrance and rested his forehead on the cool surface of the door, drew one long breath, another. When he opened it, 6 officers filled the hallway, 2 in navy vests, 3 in plain clothes, 1 with a camera. Their shoulders dripped rainwater. Their expressions were tired and wary. "Mr. Odum," the lead officer said. "We have a warrant to search the premises and take you in for questioning related to illegal narcotics and financial misconduct. Step aside." Ben nodded. "You can come in," he said, voice steadying as if he had borrowed it from another man. They swept the room. The camera clicked, capturing bottles, the scattered pills, the broken glass. One officer moved straight toward the bedroom. Another lifted the wedding album with gloved hands, turned it, frowned. A plainclothes officer stood near Ben's bar and touched the red light above the foyer. "Cameras," he called. "He's wired the whole place." "Not me," Ben said without thinking. "She did." "Who?" the lead asked sharply. "My wife," Ben said and realized how the word felt now, sharp like stepping on a nail. "We'll need her to come out," the officer said. He knocked softly on the bedroom door. "Ma'am?" "Lagos Police." Silence. He tried again. "Ma'am, please." The door opened. The room beyond was dark and still, save for the way the curtains breathed with each gust. A draft touched Ben's face. A second door to the service corridor hung ajar. Naomi was gone. The officer's jaw tightened. He glanced at Ben. "Sir, I need you to sit where I can see you." Ben walked to the sofa as instructed, shoulders squared, body trembling. In the balcony glass, his reflection stood between thunder and the bridge's lit cables. He thought of what Pastor Odum used to say on Sundays, "When you are falling, reach for the thing that doesn't move." Ben was falling now. He had to find it. The plainclothes officer spoke into his radio. Another officer opened drawers with quick efficiency. They found more pills than Ben thought were in the house. They found receipts he did not recognize. They found a thumb drive labeled with a date he had never written. Everything looked planted. He wanted to shout it, but he had learned, in boardrooms and courtrooms, that shouting rarely changed minds. Then the officer at the foyer camera straightened. "Olga, you should see this." On the monitor, linked to the security system, someone had cued a video to play. The screen showed Naomi in the living room earlier that evening, calm, immaculate, speaking to the lens as if giving an interview. "Everything is ready," she said. "He will take the pills when I leave the bottle. He trusts me." She lifted a phone, Ben's phone, and tapped. "The accounts will shift at midnight. He won't know until morning. Phase 2 at dawn." Her face in the footage softened, almost pitying. "I told you, he's weaker than he thinks." The room went quiet except for the rain and the far-off honk of a barge in the harbor. The lead officer's eyes flicked from the screen to Ben and back. "Sir," he said slowly, "do you have the passcodes to this system?" "No," Ben answered. "But I know who does." "Who?" the officer asked. Ben's mouth was dry. You shaped the name anyway. Deo. Deo Akand. As he spoke, a new message popped onto the still-lit monitor, a live overlay not from the police system. It bloomed in stark white letters across the footage of Naomi's face. Phase 2, remove him before sunrise. The letters faded. The power flickered. The room plunged into darkness, came back in a dim emergency glow. Somewhere in the service corridor, a door clanged shut, metal on metal. The lead officer's radio crackled with static and a broken line of speech. Teams at the rear stairwell, repeat movement. The officer raised a hand. Nobody leaves this apartment. Ben, cold settling under his skin, realized the storm outside wasn't the only thing closing in. Whoever owned those words on the screen wasn't finished. The building had too many doors. Too many ways for a man to vanish without a sound. From the hallway, a second pounding started. Not on his door this time, but on the service exit that led down into the staff parking beneath the tower. The sound was hard and fast, like someone impatient with time. "Sir," the officer said, turning toward the noise, "stay where you are." Ben didn't move. He stared at the bedroom doorway, at the dark beyond, at the service corridor where Naomi had slipped like a shadow. Somewhere below them, engines revved. Somewhere above, a drone buzzed near the balcony glass, small and black, its camera eye blinking red. Ben lifted his head toward the storm, and for the first time since he fell, his mind cleared. If Phase 2 happened before sunrise, he had less than 5 hours to learn who was holding the strings, and whether he had the strength left to cut them. The pounding stopped. A key scratched in the service lock. The door swung inward. And the person who stepped through was the last face Ben expected to see. It was Pastor Odum. Ben's father stood in the service doorway, rain glistening on his gray hair, a neon-orange maintenance badge clipped to his shirt. He looked smaller than the last time Ben had seen him. Maybe it was the bad light, maybe it was the night, but his eyes were steady, the same deep brown that had watched Ben take his first steps across a bare church floor. "Daddy?" Ben said, surprised out of his pain. The lead officer stiffened. "Sir, this is an active search. You can't." "I was called," Pastor Odum said quietly, holding up a key ring that the building engineer must have given him. "My son is sick. I will not get in your way." He did not try to touch Ben. He just stood where he was, right hand closed around a thin plastic folder he'd kept under his shirt to keep it dry. The storm made the windows hum. The officer looked from father to son, then jerked his chin at the sofa. "You have 5 minutes. Then I need the room clear." Pastor Odum nodded, moved 3 steps closer, and laid the plastic folder on the coffee table. "I should have told you days ago," he said. "I was waiting for a quiet moment." There is no quiet moment. Ben's hands, still shaking, hovered over the folder but didn't open it. He studied his father's face. He saw the sleepless night there, saw something like fear and something like resolve. The last time they had spoken, his father had asked, not unkindly, "How long can a man run on fumes and headlines?" Ben had laughed it off. Now the question felt like a prophecy. The officer's radio murmured. Rain hissed against the glass. Somewhere in the service corridor, a lift shuddered and stopped. "Sit," Pastor Odum said softly. Ben sat. He forced his chest to rise and fall the way his therapist taught him when the world went sideways. "Inhale. Hold. Exhale. We won't speak in circles," his father said. "Listen, and then remember." The words pulled Ben back, clean as a tide. He remembered himself at 16, straddling a borrowed chair in his mother's kitchen in Yaba, laptop balanced on a stack of old hymn books because the table wobbled. He had built a tiny app that found open desks in overcrowded libraries around Lagos by scraping power outage maps and crowdsourced pings. He called it Seat Finder. He launched it on a Sunday night. By Monday morning, Unilag students were sharing it faster than jokes. By Wednesday, a tech blog picked it up and added the line that would follow him for years, "Young Lion in Lagos." He remembered Malik, tall and thin, laughing so hard he almost spilled Zobo on the keyboard. "Benji, you did it." He remembered the first investor pitch at a co-working loft in Yaba. Exposed brick walls, hot fans clicking like tiny bones, a long table where men older than his father asked him to explain his business model in 3 minutes or less. He remembered the one man who didn't talk much, who watched with a quiet, almost amused attention. Deo Akand. When everyone else left, Deo had stayed behind. "Come," he had said, tapping the table. "Explain it to me like I'm your uncle who sells roasted corn." They sat together for an hour. Ben left with a small check and a larger door opening. He remembered the growth, the second app that mapped Lagos delivery routes around unannounced road closures. The third one that matched small market sellers to buyers across neighborhoods, the team that grew from 2 to 10 to 80. He remembered the first office he could afford, the day his mother brought jollof and meat pie for everyone and said to the room, "Take care of my son." He remembered his father standing in a corner, with that same steady look, praying under his breath. By 25, Ben's company, Odum Industries, had turned into a constellation of services that made a city of 10 million people feel, on good days, almost simple. He raised money in Lagos, in Accra, and Washington, D.C. He took calls at 3 a.m., fell asleep with code in his eyes. Magazines put his photo on glossy pages beside words like meteoric, global, visionary. He bought his parents a house in Ikeja with a mango tree that flooded the yard with shade. He paid for solar panels on the church roof. And then, like a single sentence turning a page into a new chapter, his parents began to press him. "Ben, you need a partner," his mother said. "A life is not built alone." "You are a man now," his father said one evening, washing a glass in the kitchen while his mother watched a Nigerian drama with the volume low. "Some doors open only when you are two." Ben had smiled then and said, "Later. After the next deal. After we expand to Port Harcourt." He meant it. But the chorus grew louder. At family gatherings, at church, at events where older women squeezed his elbow and said, "Who is taking care of you? A man cannot marry his work." He tried to ignore it until the night Deo hosted a charity gala at Eco Hotel. The ballroom was a lake of light. A band played old-school highlife. Governors' aides and young founders floated like boats in dark suits and bright dresses. Deo introduced Ben to donors with the soft pride of an uncle showing off a firstborn. Near the end he said casually, "You must meet my daughter. She read one of your interviews and called me shouting like a teenager. I told her not to shout at her father. She said, 'Then introduce me fast.'" Naomi stepped out of a group of women as if she'd been waiting for the cue. A sea green dress, braids pinned back, eyes that met his as if they recognized him from another life. She talked about books she loved, about building a school library near Badagry, about cities that breathe and cities that choke. When she laughed, it rolled warm and soft. It felt like rest. They went for suya with Malik and two of Naomi's friends. They argued about music in the car. She teased him for keeping a spare laptop charger in his glove box, like a man carries a ring. She made plans that included him without asking. For a while he was grateful. The courtship was fast because everything in Ben's life was fast. Naomi fit like a puzzle piece he hadn't known was missing. She sent food to his office. She touched his shoulder during calls and he didn't mind. When his parents met her, his mother's eyes went shiny. "Grace," she whispered after Naomi left. "God has given you grace." The wedding was a Lagos dream. A lawn at Eco Atlantic, guests in Gelly like bright sails, a drone spelling names against the evening sky, Pastor Odum's voice trembling as he blessed their vows. In the photos, Ben's smile looked effortless. A week later, Naomi suggested he change his phone. "Start fresh with me," she said, and kissed the side of his neck, and he did it without thinking. Little things followed, gentle then firm. "Let's use a new accountant. He's so efficient," she said, and the old one got a goodbye cake. "This driver is too chatty. Take mine. Store your backups in my father's private cloud. It's safer. Why keep that old phone? It looks like a fossil." She laughed, and he laughed too, and put it in a safe because throwing it away felt like tossing out a part of himself. When Naomi asked to come to Apapa for a site visit, "I want to see what makes your city run," she said. Ben felt proud to show her the maze of containers, the cranes that dipped like giant birds, the smell of diesel and rain. She wandered the aisles with him, held his hand, pointed at ship names like they were planets. Later, he remembered she had vanished for 10 minutes to find a restroom, and when she came back, her dress smelled briefly of iron and wet rope. He thought nothing of it then. Now it glowed in his memory like a flare. The first cracks were easy to hide. Ben missed a board meeting after a red-eye flight and told himself he'd make it up. He started taking pills to sleep after too many nights wired on adrenaline and silence, and he told himself he'd stop next week. Naomi frowned at the bottles. "Baby, moderation," she said. Then she set a glass of water by his bed and turned off the lamp. Months slipped. A bad quarter hit like a slap. A deal he had counted on dissolved in a polite email. He held himself together with caffeine and stubbornness. When he fell quietly so no one would hear. When he stood up, he did it faster than before. Only Malik saw the edges and said, "Benji, tap the brakes." Ben didn't tap. He pressed harder. And when Naomi's father offered a new credit line with kinder terms, "Family helps family," Deo said, leaning back in his chair with that bird of prey stillness, Ben signed. The pen felt heavy that day. He woke that night with a sense of having moved a piece on a board he didn't fully see. A glass clinked in the present. Ben blinked. The room came back, the officers, the storm, the faint whir of a drone near the balcony. His father nudged the folder. "It breaks me to say this," Pastor Odum said, voice low. "But you must know, we were not only careless. We were used." Ben slid the folder open with his thumb. Inside were copies of emails printed on church office paper, a small flash drive taped to the last page, and a single sheet with a familiar signature, his father's. "I begged Deo to slow the wedding," Pastor Odum said, eyes shining now. "He said your enemies were circling, that you needed formal ties to protect you. He said our church loan, do you remember? The one for the roof and the well? He said it depended on favorable winds. I thought he meant donors would be more generous if we were family. I did not see the chain. I signed a proxy months later when he brought a board resolution to consolidate voting power in an emergency. He said, just for a short time, Papa, to help Ben steady the ship." Ben's mouth went dry. "You signed what?" "Control," his father said hoarsely. "I gave him my proxy to vote your shares if you were temporarily incapacitated. I did not understand the legal words. I trusted him as I trusted a brother. Today, a courier left this at the church gate." He tapped the flash drive. "It holds recordings. Naomi's voice. Deo's voice. They talk about a plan that began before you met her. They mention pills. They mention a date. Tonight." The lead officer took one step closer, listening despite himself. Ben felt the room tilt and catch. "Play it," he said. The officer looked at the device with professional skepticism. "Chain of custody," he began. "Play it," the pastor repeated, startling them all, a command rising from a gentle man. "Now." The officer nodded to a colleague who produced a small laptop, slid the drive in and pulled up the largest audio file. The speakers crackled, then cleared. Naomi's voice filled the room, calm even like she was ordering flowers. "Phase 1 is social. Give him rest, give him routine, move the numbers slowly. Phase 2 is chemical. Create a crisis he will believe he caused. Phase 3 is legal. Invoke the proxy, claim temporary control, open the vault." A faint laugh, the kind she had used at parties when telling women where she bought her shoes. "By the time he knows what happened, he will be too tired to fight." Another voice answered, dry and flat. "Deo, leave no fingerprints. If he stumbles, steady him. If he runs, rope him. If he looks back, smile." The officers froze. Even the storm seemed to hush. A third voice cut in near the end, one Ben didn't recognize, American accent, smooth, female. "And after the transfer?" Naomi again, "After the transfer, remove him before sunrise." The file clicked off. The lead officer exhaled and straightened, face hardening into duty. "We're securing this floor," he said, signaling to his team. "Nobody in or out without my say. Mr. Odum, you are not under arrest at this time. You are under protection." He had barely finished speaking when the drone at the balcony glass rose higher, lens irising open. The emergency lights dipped. Somewhere far below, a generator coughed and died. A new message flashed on the foyer monitor in the same stark type as before. Only this time it wasn't instructions. It was a photograph, Pastor Odum at his church gate, accepting a small brown envelope from a delivery rider. The timestamp was less than an hour old. The frame widened, and from the left edge, a shadowed figure stepped into view, tall in a raincoat, holding what looked like a phone with an extended antenna. The face was blurred, but the posture was unmistakable to Ben, to anyone who had watched the man enter a room and own it. The caption under the image wrote itself across the screen. "Phase 3 commences when the pastor leaves this apartment." Ben stood up so fast the room swam. "Daddy, don't move," he said. Pastor Odum looked at his son, then at the officers, then at the door he had just used. "I won't," he said. "But you will." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small black key with a white plastic tag, and pressed it into Ben's palm. It was cold as a coin in Harmattan. "It opens a lock you forgot you had," the pastor said, his voice steady. "Downstairs, past the old generator room, behind the wall that sweats. You hid something there when you were 22, before you were a lion to anyone. If you want to live and if you want to fight, you need it now." The lead officer lifted a hand. "Sir, what lock? Where?" Pastor Odum looked him in the eye. "The lock behind the church builder's paneling," he said. "Deo paid for the marble upstairs. He didn't pay for the old wall 2 floors down." Ben stared at the key. Memory flickered, wet concrete, A ladder, Malik laughing in the dark, a metal box sunk into a cavity and sealed with plaster. He had called it his rainy day ark. He had forgotten it existed. The drone's lens widened like an eye opening. The emergency lights flickered again. And out in the hall at the service stairwell, someone began to sing very softly, a hymn Pastor Odum used to hum on Sunday evenings. Only the voice was wrong, too smooth, too amused. Naomi's voice. "Ben," she called through the metal door, almost tender. "Open up. Phase 2 is over. It's time for the goodbye." The voice drifted through the rain and concrete like perfume, familiar, soft, terrifying. "Ben," Naomi repeated, her tone gentle, coaxing as if calling a child out of hiding. "Don't make this harder. You've done enough damage already." The officers exchanged looks. One gestured to the others to flank the doorway, guns drawn, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The emergency lights buzzed weakly, painting everyone in dim red pulses. Pastor Odum whispered, "That's her?" Ben nodded, throat tight. "That's Naomi." The lead officer moved quietly to the service door and signaled for silence. The hymn had stopped. All that remained was the low hum of the storm outside and the faint whir of the drone still floating beyond the balcony. "Ma'am," the officer called firmly, "step away from the door. Identify yourself." A low laugh answered him, too calm, too knowing. "Officer," she said, "I think you've been fed the wrong story. You're guarding the criminal, not the victim." Her voice echoed against the concrete, wrapping around the words like silk over glass. Ben clenched his fists. "Don't listen to her. She's manipulating." Before he could finish, the intercom beside the foyer door lit up again, this time showing Naomi's face from one of the security cameras in the corridor. Her hair was slicked back from the rain, her makeup washed slightly, yet her eyes burned with a chilling composure. "Ben," she said through the speaker, "look at yourself. Look at your father. Do you really think this will end with you standing? You've lost everything. The board, the banks, even the press, they all believe what they've been told. You're finished." Her words hit like stones. Ben rose, his voice raw. "You did this. You and your father. You used me." Naomi tilted her head, that same practiced half-smile curving her lips. "Used?" she echoed softly. "No, love. You were chosen. You were the perfect key. And now you've served your purpose." The camera feed cut to static. Then silence. The officers stiffened, every ear straining for the next sound. From the hallway came a single click. A faint metallic sound. The lead officer shouted, "Down!" An explosion rocked the corridor. The service door shuddered inward, splinters flying. Smoke billowed into the room. The red emergency lights went black, plunging the penthouse into darkness. Someone screamed, one of the younger officers, then coughed violently as the smoke spread. Ben stumbled toward his father, grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the main hall. "Come on, Daddy, we have to move." The officers regrouped quickly, flashlights cutting white beams through the haze. "Everyone stay behind cover," the lead yelled. "We're under attack." "Attack." Pastor Odum choked. "But by who?" Ben's voice cracked. "By them." A shot rang out. Glass shattered. The drone outside crashed through the balcony window, spinning wildly, sparks flying as it hit the marble floor. It wasn't just a drone, it was armed. A small charge at its underbelly glowed red, then blinked out, dead before detonation. Naomi's voice floated again, faint but taunting, from somewhere on the other side of the smoke. "You can't fight the tide, Ben. You built it." "Move him," the lead officer barked to two of his men. "Get the pastor to the lower stairwell. Now." One officer took Pastor Odum by the arm and hurried him toward the far exit. The other helped Ben, whose legs were weak but burning with adrenaline. He gripped the small key his father had given him so tightly it dug into his palm. Down the stairwell they went, each floor a cavern of flickering emergency bulbs and the echo of boots on tile. Sirens from police cars outside grew louder as backup arrived below. When they reached the fifth-floor landing, Ben turned suddenly. "Wait." The officers halted. "The key," Ben gasped. He said it unlocked something. "A safe behind the old wall. I think it's proof." "Proof?" the younger officer asked. Ben nodded. "If Deo's been running shell companies under my name, it'll be there. And if Naomi's plan is bigger than we think, if it's tied to the Apapa warehouse, it's the only way to stop them." The lead officer hesitated, torn between orders and instinct. "The top floors aren't safe," he warned. Pastor Odum's voice came from behind them, calm but firm. "Then we go where God leads, officer. The truth can't stay in a wall forever." Ben turned the key over in his fingers, heart pounding. The old generator room, he murmured. 2 floors below. That's where I hid it. They descended 2 more flights. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The hum of power faded, replaced by dripping water and the echo of the storm above. The corridor at the bottom was narrow, lined with peeling paint and broken pipes. It smelled of rust and damp earth. Ben led the way, flashlight beam trembling. Here, he whispered, stopping beside a metal maintenance panel streaked with dust. Behind this. He jammed the small key into a hidden slot under the hinge. The panel gave a low groan and swung open, revealing a concrete cavity sealed with a rusted steel box. This is it, he said, breath fogging in the cold air. The officer knelt and pried the box loose with the butt of his rifle. When it finally cracked open, a faint smell of oil and paper filled the air. Inside were hard drives, flash cards, and a small notebook wrapped in plastic. Ben pulled out the notebook first. It was his handwriting, dated 3 years ago. He flipped through the pages, transaction codes, offshore accounts, contracts he didn't remember signing. And at the back, a list of names connected to Deo's companies. But one name froze his blood. Naomi Odum. Next to it, a notation in his own hand, added later in another ink. Co-owner, 40% stake, via Akand Holdings. What is this? The officer asked. Ben's voice was faint. She's been on the board all along, under a fake name. He flipped another page and there it was. A schematic of the Apapa warehouses, marked with routes and containers. At the bottom, in Naomi's precise handwriting. Shipment, sunrise. His eyes widened. It's not about the company. It's about the shipment. Drugs. Or worse. The younger officer swore softly. That's why she said Phase 2 ends at sunrise. The older officer reached for his radio. Control, this is Alpha 6. We've got evidence of an active operation linked to Apapa Port. Request immediate intercept. Static. No reply. Control, do you copy? Still nothing. The signal was dead. From above came a dull boom, followed by the distant wail of alarms. The building shook slightly, dust raining from the ceiling. Pastor Odum whispered a prayer under his breath. Lord, cover us. Ben looked up toward the stairwell. His voice trembled. She's burning it. She's burning everything. The officer grabbed his shoulder. We need to move, now. They sprinted toward the service tunnel, the one that led to the underground parking lot. The air grew hotter as they ran, smoke starting to creep down the stairwell. But before they reached the final door, a figure stepped out of the shadows, so calm, so perfectly still, that everyone froze. Naomi. She wore a long black raincoat over her evening dress, her face streaked with ash and rain. In her hand she held a small detonator. Her eyes, red-rimmed but steady, met Ben's. I told you, she said quietly. Phase 3. Ben's pulse thundered in his ears. Naomi, stop. You don't have to do this. She smiled faintly, sorrow flashing across her face for just a heartbeat. You still don't see, do you? This was never about you. It was about him. Who? Ben demanded. Her gaze softened, not at Ben but at the old man beside him. Your father. Pastor Odum froze, eyes narrowing. Me? Naomi's voice was almost tender. You took something from Deo years ago, something that was supposed to be his. And he never forgot. What are you talking about? Ben shouted. My father never took anything. Naomi stepped closer, raising the detonator slightly. He took the prophecy. The one your mother's church was built on. The one that promised the child of Odum would rise above kings. Her voice trembled with anger. Deo believed it was about him, until your father claimed it for you. Ben blinked, confusion slicing through his fear. A prophecy? Pastor Odum's face went pale, a secret long buried surfacing in his eyes. Naomi nodded slowly. Yes. And now that prophecy dies with your name. She pressed the detonator button. Click. Nothing happened. Her face faltered. She pressed it again. Click. Still nothing. The older officer raised his weapon. Drop it. Now. Naomi's hand trembled, then she laughed, a hollow, broken sound. You think you've won? She said. You don't understand how deep this goes. Even if I die tonight, the sunrise shipment leaves Apapa. The drugs, the papers, the names, they'll destroy everything your father built. Ben took a step forward, his voice trembling. Naomi, please, whatever he did, whatever they told you, it doesn't have to end like this. Her lips quivered, eyes glistening. For the first time she looked almost human again. You were supposed to be my way out, she whispered. Not my cage. The younger officer moved too quickly, stepping toward her. Naomi flinched, stumbled backward, her heel caught a pipe, and the detonator fell from her hand, clattering to the floor. A gunshot echoed. Naomi gasped, clutching her side. Ben froze. No. She collapsed against the wall, sliding down slowly. The officer's hand shook, the gun still raised. She was going for it again, he stammered. Ben dropped to his knees beside her. Naomi. Stay with me. She smiled faintly through the blood. You really did love me, didn't you? Ben's voice broke. I still do. Her eyes softened. Then run, she whispered. They're not done yet. Her breath hitched once, twice, then stopped. The hallway fell silent except for the rain outside. The lead officer exhaled, lowering his weapon. We have to go. The fire's spreading. Ben sat there a moment longer, staring at her still face, feeling his chest cave in. His father's hand touched his shoulder gently. Ben, he said, voice thick with grief, this isn't the end. She spoke of sunrise. We must stop what's coming. Ben wiped his face, swallowed hard, and nodded. Then we go to Apapa. He stood, firelight flickering on his wet face. If that shipment leaves the docks, it won't just destroy me, it'll destroy half this city. The lead officer stepped forward. You're not going alone. I'll get backup. We move before dawn. Ben looked once more at Naomi's body, then down at the notebook in his hand, the page marked shipment, sunrise. He turned toward the stairwell, voice low but fierce. Then we finish this before the sun rises. And as they disappeared into the dark tunnel, far above them on the broken balcony of the penthouse, another drone rose into the sky, its red light blinking, transmitting one final message back to a hidden receiver. Phase 4, confirmed. Proceed to Apapa. Comment your thoughts below, tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story to keep the channel growing. The rain had slowed to a stubborn drizzle by the time Ben, his father, and the officers reached the base of the tower. Lagos before dawn had its own heartbeat, distant sirens, tires hissing through puddles, the far-off clang of a port that never truly slept. The fire alarms in the building still howled, echoing through the concrete parking garage as emergency lights painted everything red. Ben's suit was torn and soaked. His hands shook from shock, exhaustion, and the dull, merciless ache of grief. Naomi's last words still haunted him. They're not done yet. He gripped the notebook tighter, the page marked shipment. Sunrise flapping as a gust of wind swept through. It was almost 4:30 a.m. Sunrise was barely 2 hours away. The lead officer, Inspector Kalu, pointed toward the open gate. We have an unmarked vehicle outside. The nearest route to Apapa is through the Eco Bridge, but we'll meet traffic from overnight tankers. We go now or we lose time. Ben nodded, glancing at his father. Are you sure you want to come? Pastor Odum met his gaze. His eyes looked older but steady. My sin started this, Ben. I will see it end. They climbed into the black SUV, Ben in the front, his father and 2 officers in the back. As the car sped out of Victoria Island, the skyline shrank behind them like a dying constellation. The streets glistened with rain, reflecting flashes of blue and red from police vehicles. Lagos was half asleep but restless. Trucks rumbled past with canvas-covered cargo, roadside vendors lit lanterns for early buyers, and the air smelled of diesel, fried akara, and wet asphalt. Inside the car the tension was thick. Explain again, Inspector Kalu said over the low hum of the engine. This shipment, you believe it's tied to the operation that ruined your company? Ben opened the notebook on his lap. These codes, these aren't financial records. They're container IDs. Look, Apapa Yard 19, Apapa Yard 24, each linked to one of Deo's shell firms. Naomi wrote, Sunrise Clearance, beside them. So, drugs, the younger officer Apara muttered. They're smuggling under your company's name. Exactly, Ben said grimly. They built everything to collapse on me. Once those containers clear customs, they'll trace back to Odum Industries. I'll be branded the mastermind of Nigeria's biggest drug trafficking scandal. Pastor Odum bowed his head. Lord have mercy. Ben's jaw tightened. And when that happens, Deo will take full control through the proxy agreement. He'll claim he's saving the company from me. Kalu's eyes flicked to the mirror. Then we stop the shipment. Whatever it takes. They sped through the nearly empty bridge, mist curling off the lagoon. Lagos's sleeping skyline shimmered like glass behind them. Halfway across, the radio crackled, static, then a voice. Alpha 6, do you copy? This is HQ. We've intercepted chatter from the port. Multiple armed men at Apapa Yard 19. Possible corruption in customs. Approach with caution. Copy that, Kalu replied. We're en route. The signal broke again. Ben stared out the window, watching the black water glide below. He could still see Naomi's face, the tremor of regret before she died. For all her betrayal, he couldn't shake the feeling that she tried to save him in the end. He whispered, "She said this was never about me." His father looked at him. What did she mean by that? Ben's voice was low. She said it was about you. Something you took from Deo years ago, a prophecy? The older man's face stiffened. That was foolish talk born of pride and envy. Daddy, what did she mean? Ben pressed. Pastor Odum's hands tightened on his Bible. For a moment, his gaze drifted out the window. The passing lights flickered over his face. Deo and I started as brothers, he began quietly. We were young ministers in the same church. Poor, ambitious, full of faith. Then one night, the old prophetess, Mama Chikir, spoke over us. She said God would raise one of our sons to stand before kings and feed the nations. She said that child would carry the mantle of light. He paused, sighing. Deo believed it was about him. He was proud, sharper than me, better connected. But when you were born, Ben, strange things began to happen. People prospered around you. The church grew. The same woman pointed to you and said, "This is the one." Deo never forgave me for it. Ben sat back stunned. So this entire feud, everything, started with a prophecy? His father nodded slowly. A prophecy and greed. I tried to reconcile with him, but power changed him. He stopped preaching and went into business. I should have seen that bitterness would grow into something darker. Inspector Kalu frowned. And now he's using that old rivalry to destroy your family, and maybe more. Ben looked down at the notebook again. We end it tonight. They reached Apapa just as the first pale light began to bleed through the clouds. The port loomed ahead, cranes like metal giants, container stacks rising in shadowy rows, the air thick with the smell of salt, oil, and smoke. Kalu parked the SUV a block from Yard 19. We go on foot from here, he said. Backup will join us in 10 minutes. They slipped into the maze of containers. Rain dripped from steel edges, creating small echoes in the fog. Somewhere a ship horn groaned. Ben's heart pounded. Every clang and whisper felt like footsteps behind him. They reached the edge of the yard. A floodlight snapped on suddenly, washing them in white. Down? Kalu hissed, pulling them behind a stack of crates. Voices carried through the mist. Men shouting in Yoruba and Pidgin, the clang of metal, the hum of forklifts. A group of armed guards in black raincoats were moving containers onto a flatbed truck. Ben peered out and froze. Among them stood a tall figure in a long gray coat, his posture unmistakable. Deo Akand. He looked untouched by the chaos, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the containers like a general inspecting his army. Kalu motioned to his men. We need proof before we strike. Ben's pulse thundered. He's right there. We can stop this now. Not without evidence, Kalu warned. If we shoot without clear cause, he walks. But Ben wasn't listening. His gaze locked on the open container nearest to Deo. A worker pried it open, and inside, neatly packed, were boxes labeled Odum Industries medical supplies. Only they weren't medical. One box cracked, revealing sealed bricks of white powder. Drugs. Enough to damn him for life. Deo's voice floated through the rain. Be sure the papers match the signature. I want the boy in prison by noon. Ben's jaw clenched. His father grabbed his arm. Ben, don't. But it was too late. Ben stepped out from behind the container, shouting, You'll never get away with this. The yard went still. Guns swung toward him. Deo turned slowly, rain glistening on his coat. When he saw Ben, a faint smile curved his mouth. Ah, the prodigal son returns. Kalu and the others rushed out, weapons drawn. Lagos police. Drop your guns. For a moment it seemed to work. The guards froze, glancing uncertainly at Deo. Then Deo's voice sliced through the air, calm and sharp. Do it. Gunfire erupted. The officers dove for cover. Bullets sparked off containers, ricocheting into the fog. Ben hit the ground beside his father, shielding him as metal fragments rained down. Kalu shouted into his radio, Shots fired at Apapa Yard 19. We need immediate backup. No response. They've jammed our signal again. Opara shouted. Ben crawled behind a forklift, heart hammering. Through the chaos, he saw Deo moving toward a truck at the far end of the yard. He grabbed Kalu's arm. He's escaping with the shipment. Kalu looked at him. Then we stop him. They broke from cover, sprinting through the hail of bullets. Ben dove behind a stack of crates, ducking as rounds shredded the air above. He spotted a dropped pistol and grabbed it, his hands trembling. Deo reached the truck and climbed onto the cab, motioning to the driver. The engines roared to life. Ben ran forward, shouting, "Stop." Deo turned, calm amid the chaos. "You still think this is about you, Ben?" He pulled a small detonator from his coat pocket. Ben froze. "You ruined me once," Deo said, voice cold. "Now I'll take everything you ever built." He pressed the button. A low rumble shook the ground. One of the containers behind Ben burst into flame. The air filled with the sound of twisting steel and roaring fire. Ben turned, coughing, blinded by heat. He heard his father's voice shouting his name. He staggered toward the sound, but before he could reach him, another explosion tore through the yard, hurling him backward into darkness. The last thing he heard before everything went black was Deo's voice, fading into the rain. Phase 4 is complete. Smoke. That was the first thing Ben became aware of, thick black smoke stinging his lungs and turning his throat raw. The world around him was a blur of fire and sound, metal groaning, sirens wailing somewhere in the distance, the faint rhythmic hum of the sea beating against the harbor wall. He coughed hard and tried to move. Pain shot through his ribs, sharp and merciless. His head throbbed where something heavy had struck him. When he managed to open his eyes, the night was over. The sun was beginning to rise, a pale orange smear bleeding through the gray clouds over Apapa Port. Bodies and debris were scattered everywhere. Flames licked up the side of a shipping container. The air reeked of diesel and burning plastic. He could hear men shouting orders in the distance, voices too faint to tell if they belonged to police or Deo's men. Ben forced himself to sit up. His shirt was torn and stained with soot. His right arm ached, but it wasn't broken. He blinked through the haze, searching desperately for his father. "Daddy?" he called, voice breaking. "Daddy?" No answer. Only the crackle of fire and the crash of something collapsing nearby. "Ben?" The voice came faintly from somewhere behind a truck. He stumbled toward it, half crawling, half limping, until he saw Inspector Kalu. The officer was bleeding from a cut on his forehead but still alive, his gun clutched tightly in one hand. "Thank God," Kalu rasped. "You're alive." "My father?" Ben gasped. "Where is he?" Kalu's face darkened. "I saw him pulled toward the far end of the yard before the explosion. He was with Apara. They went to cover the shipment truck. I lost sight of them when everything went up." Ben's chest clenched. "We have to find him." Kalu nodded grimly. "We will, but listen to me, Ben. That blast wasn't just to kill us. It was to erase evidence. If Deo escapes this morning, he'll make sure the world believes you died here and he inherits your empire clean." Ben's eyes narrowed. "Then he's not leaving this port alive." Kalu handed him a small earpiece. "Backup's 5 minutes out. We move now." They made their way through the wreckage, crouched low between twisted steel and smoking tires. The early light painted the harbor gold and red. The chaos was surreal. Dock workers running, shouts echoing, police sirens growing louder in the distance. At the far end of the yard, beyond a wall of burning crates, a convoy of black SUVs was forming. Men in tactical vests moved quickly, loading boxes into one of the last unburnt containers. And there, standing in the middle of it all, calm and composed, was Deo Akand. He was giving orders into a satellite phone, his coat now smeared with ash but his expression unreadable. Ben clenched his fists. "He's right there." "Wait," Kalu hissed. "We flank from the west. Don't rush him." But Ben had stopped listening. His father's voice echoed in his memory, "The truth can't stay in a wall forever." He looked at the sunrise spilling over the water and felt something inside him break open. Fear, anger, and grief fusing into something steadier. He stepped out from cover, shouting, "Deo?" The older man turned slowly. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The master and the apprentice, the betrayer and the betrayed, standing across the ruin of everything they had built. "Ben," Deo said softly, almost admiringly, "you survived." "I did," Ben said hoarsely. "And I'm ending this." Deo gave a small, cold smile. "End it? My boy, you can't end what you didn't start. This game was set long before you were born." He gestured toward the flames. "You see this chaos? It's Legos. It eats the weak and crowns the ruthless. You think you built an empire? No. You were just my front man, the smiling face for what needed to be done in the dark." Ben's jaw tightened. "You killed Naomi. You destroyed my company. You turned me into your scapegoat. Deo's smile faltered slightly. Naomi made her choices. She was never meant to love you. That was her weakness. Ben's vision blurred with fury. You used your own daughter. She understood sacrifice, Deo snapped. Something your generation never will. Behind him, one of the men shouted in Yoruba, Oga, the police are closing in. Deo didn't even turn. His gaze stayed fixed on Ben. Walk away, boy. Take what's left of your name and disappear. The police will believe what I tell them. You'll rot in a cell or vanish under the sea, and I'll still control what matters. Ben took a step forward. You taught me everything about winning, Uncle Deo. But you forgot one thing, you never taught me how to quit. Kalu and two more officers burst from the smoke, guns raised. Lagos police, drop your weapons. The yard erupted again. Men scattered, bullets cutting through the dawn. Deo ducked behind a truck, shouting orders. Ben sprinted after him, weaving through smoke and fire. He caught up near the dock's edge, where a speedboat was waiting, its engine already rumbling. Deo climbed aboard, shouting to his men. Move! Move! Ben lunged, grabbing his coat. The two men struggled, grappling at the boat's edge. Deo's phone slipped into the water with a splash. You were like a son to me. Deo roared, trying to shove him off. I was your son. Ben yelled back. Until you decided to destroy me. Deo pulled a gun from his belt and aimed. Then die like one. A shot rang out, loud and final. But it wasn't Ben who fell. Deo staggered, eyes wide, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. He turned slowly toward the pier. Standing there, trembling but alive, was Pastor Odum, holding a pistol with both hands. His voice shook. No man destroys what God builds. Deo's mouth twitched into something between a smile and a grimace. The prophecy ends with you, he rasped. Then he fell backward into the water. The sea swallowed him in silence. Ben dropped to his knees, gasping. The world around him blurred again, the smell of smoke, the sound of sirens, the cries of the injured blending into a dull roar. Kalu ran up, shouting orders into his radio. Police trucks poured into the yard, blue lights flashing. Ben turned to his father. Daddy? Pastor Odum lowered the gun slowly. His hands were shaking, tears streaming down his face. I never wanted this, he whispered. I wanted peace. Ben took the gun from him gently and tossed it aside. It's over now. The older man looked toward the sunrise, his eyes wet but steady. No, he said quietly. For men like Deo, evil never dies easily. There will be others. Ben nodded, exhausted but resolute. Then we'll be ready. He stood, looking at the water where Deo had vanished. The reflection of the dawn shimmered across the waves, warm, fragile, new. Behind him, Kalu approached, holding out a small hard drive. We recovered this from the wrecked SUV. It's encrypted, but it's labeled Phase 5. Ben stared at it, his stomach tightening. Phase 5. Kalu nodded grimly. Looks like this wasn't the end. Ben turned back toward the rising sun, the sea breeze tugging at his torn clothes. Then we find out what's next, he said quietly. And this time we finish it for good. The camera of dawn light widened over the burning port, the city awakening around them. And far offshore, beneath the soft hiss of the waves, a small red light blinked once, then again. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story to support more gripping African folktales like this one. The morning sun crawled slowly across Lagos, casting its light on a city that never truly slept. From the balcony of a hospital suite in Ikoyi, the world below seemed deceptively peaceful. Commuters honking, vendors calling out, birds wheeling over the lagoon. Inside, however, everything was quiet except for the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor. Ben Odum sat on the edge of the hospital bed, one arm wrapped in a sling, his body stiff from bruises. His father lay in the bed beside him, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with steady but shallow breaths. Pastor Odum had suffered mild shock after the firefight at the port, but he was alive, barely. Inspector Kalu stood near the door, his shirt untucked, coffee untouched in his hand. The government's already seized the containers, he said. We've confirmed what you told us. They were full of narcotics disguised as medical aid. It's the biggest smuggling ring Lagos has seen in 10 years. Ben nodded slowly. And the media? Controlled, Kalu replied. For now. The commissioner's announcing a full investigation into Odum Industries' involvement. I told him we found evidence you were framed, but it'll take time to clear your name publicly. Ben exhaled, looking out at the morning light. Time, he said softly. That's the one thing I don't have. Kalu frowned. Why? Ben turned to him. Because Deo planned for this. He called it Phase 5. The officer's brow creased. We're still trying to decrypt that drive. You think it's another operation? I don't think, Ben said grimly. I know. He stood, walking to the small table where his father's Bible lay open. He picked up a folded sheet of paper he had found inside earlier that morning, a handwritten note in his father's pen. If something happens to me, go to the old church office. The truth began there, and so will the end. Ben handed it to Kalu. He must have hidden something before the attack. Kalu scanned it, then nodded. We'll go together. But you need to be ready. If Deo had other allies, they'll know we're coming. Ben gave a faint, tired smile. Let them come. I've got nothing left to lose. The old church sat at the edge of Surelier, its faded yellow walls and rusted gates standing like a memory. Ben hadn't been there in years, not since his father moved the congregation to a larger building in Ikeja. The yard was overgrown with weeds, and pigeons fluttered from the broken windows as they approached. Kalu pushed the creaking door open cautiously. Stay close, he murmured. They stepped inside. Dust hung in the air like fog. Sunlight filtered through the cracked glass, scattering across the old pews. Ben walked to the pulpit, tracing his fingers across the wood his father had built by hand. Behind it, a faded mural of an open Bible still bore the words, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Something about the verse made him pause. He knelt, pressing his palm against the wooden floor beneath the mural, and felt a hollow sound. There, he whispered. Help me lift it. Kalu joined him. Together, they pried up the warped planks until they revealed a small compartment filled with old files, photographs, and a wooden lockbox sealed with wax. Ben's heart raced. He hid this for years. Kalu examined the box. No key. Ben frowned, then remembered the small silver key his father had given him the night before. He slipped it into the lock. It fit perfectly. The lid creaked open, revealing a stack of envelopes bound together with string and a thick, leather-bound notebook labeled, "The Akand Covenant." Ben flipped it open. Inside were signed agreements between Deo Akand and several other businessmen, politicians, and even a few senior officers. The handwriting was meticulous. Each page documented financial transfers, blackmail details, and coded notes about control through faith and commerce. This isn't just about drugs, Kalu muttered. It's a network, a full corruption chain linking churches, corporations, and government. Ben's eyes scanned the last page and froze. There was a photo clipped to the final entry. Naomi. Smiling. Alive. The image was dated 2 days ago. Ben's pulse hammered in his ears. That's not possible. I saw her die. Kalu leaned closer. Could it be old? Ben shook his head. No. Look at the timestamp. It's after the explosion. She's alive. At the bottom of the page, scrawled in Naomi's handwriting, were 5 words. Phase 5, the heir returns. A cold shiver ran through him. She's coming back, he whispered. Kalu frowned. For what? Ben's voice was low, almost trembling. For me, or for what's left of my name. He stood pacing. Naomi must have survived the shot. Deo's network must have pulled her out. And now she's continuing the plan. Kalu nodded grimly. If that's true, we're dealing with someone who knows your every move. We'll need to go underground for a while. Ben turned toward the window, staring out at the city skyline. No, he said. I'm not running again. I'm taking the fight to her this time. The officer sighed. You don't even know where she is. Ben looked down at the notebook again. In the margin beside the last entry, there was a location scrawled hastily. The Glass House, Lekki Peninsula. He clenched his jaw. Now I do. By evening they arrived at Lekki Peninsula. The estate known as the Glass House was a sprawling mansion overlooking the lagoon, one of the few properties Ben hadn't known Deo owned. The building shimmered with mirrored walls, its surface reflecting the sunset like fire. Kalu parked a safe distance away. If she's alive, she'll have guards. We can't walk in blind. Ben's voice was firm. We won't have to. He held up his phone, showing the video they had retrieved from the Apapa Port hard drive. Evidence of Deo and Naomi confessing to the smuggling operation. If she's still continuing her father's legacy, this will destroy her. They moved quietly around the perimeter, approaching from the back where the lagoon met the house. The tide lapped softly against the stilts beneath the deck. Through the glass walls they could see movement, shadows, silhouettes. Then Ben froze. Standing by the window dressed in white was Naomi. alive. She looked almost angelic, her hair loose around her shoulders, her face calm. She was speaking to someone on the phone, pacing slowly. Kalu whispered, "Your call. We can move in." Ben swallowed hard. "No guns unless I say." They slipped inside through the back, the door unlocked. Naomi's voice floated through the large living room, sharp and composed. "Yes," she was saying. "Phase 5 begins tonight. His name will either rise again, or burn with mine." Ben stepped forward. "Naomi." She turned slowly. The phone slipped from her hand. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then Naomi smiled faintly. "You really don't die easily, do you, Ben?" He stared at her. "You were dead. I buried you in my head." Her smile deepened, tinged with sadness. "You should know by now, my love, nothing in Lagos ever truly dies. Not lies, not ghosts, not us." Kalu raised his gun. "Put your hands where I can see them." Naomi didn't flinch. She looked straight at Ben. "If you shoot me now, you'll never know the truth about Deo, or about what he left behind in your name." Ben frowned. "What are you talking about?" She stepped closer, eyes locked on his. "Phase 5 isn't about destruction, Ben. It's about rebirth. You are the final piece." Ben's voice was a whisper. "Explain." Naomi tilted her head, her voice dropping to a murmur. "There's something in the offshore accounts, a project your father and mine built together years ago. Deo wanted to control it. But your father, he hid it inside your company under your signature. It's not money, Ben. It's something far more valuable, something that could reshape everything." Ben's heart pounded. "What is it?" She smiled. "A seed." Before he could ask more, the room lights flickered, and then went out completely. From somewhere in the darkness, a man's voice echoed through the hall, calm, deep, and chillingly familiar. "Didn't I tell you, Naomi? Phase 5 begins when the dead rise." Ben froze. It was Deo's voice. For several long seconds, no one moved. The house was swallowed by darkness, total, suffocating black. Then, from somewhere deep within, came the slow echo of footsteps. Ben's blood ran cold. That voice, smooth, deliberate, impossible, still rang in his ears. "Deo," he whispered. Naomi didn't answer. Her breath hitched once, and even in the dark, Ben could feel the tremor running through her. Inspector Kalu flicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the shadows, slicing across the glass walls, the expensive paintings, the grand staircase that curled like a serpent toward the second floor. The place looked empty. Still, the air felt charged, alive, almost watching. "Stay behind me," Kalu ordered, gun drawn. But before he could take a step, a voice spoke again, closer this time. "You buried me in the sea, Ben. But did you really think a man like me drowns that easily?" The light flickered again, once, twice, and then stabilized. Standing at the top of the staircase was Deo Akand. Alive. He looked impossibly calm, dressed in a black suit with a silver tie. His face bore faint burns along his cheek, his left hand wrapped in a leather glove, but his eyes, they were the same. Cold. Calculated. Eternal. Naomi gasped, covering her mouth. "Father?" Kalu aimed his gun. "Don't move." Deo's gaze drifted to him, bored. "Put that down before you embarrass yourself, officer." He descended the steps slowly, deliberately, each step echoing through the silent house. "I warned you, Ben. This isn't a story of good versus evil, it's survival." Ben could hardly breathe. "You were dead. I saw you fall." Deo's lips curved. "A fall is not death. Not when you've prepared for it." He turned slightly toward Naomi. "You did well, my daughter. Though I must say, you were too soft." Naomi's voice shook. "You lied to me. You used me." "I made you," Deo snapped, his composure cracking for the first time. "Every step you took, every tear you shed, it was all part of the design." Ben's fists clenched. "And what about me? What was I? Another pawn in your game?" Deo smiled faintly. "You were the board." Kalu took a cautious step forward. "You're under arrest for multiple counts of conspiracy, smuggling, and attempted murder." Deo's hand flicked upward before he could finish. The sound of metal cocking echoed from behind the walls. Hidden panels slid open, and a dozen men stepped out of the shadows, armed, silent, disciplined. Kalu froze. Ambush. Ben's heart sank. They were surrounded. Deo walked closer, his polished shoes clicking softly on the marble floor. "You see, Ben, Lagos is a city that rewards foresight. While you were dreaming about clean business and innovation, I was building something that lasts. A network that controls what people see, hear, and believe. Even your father's church stood because I allowed it to. Pastor Odum's name made Ben's blood boil. You don't get to talk about my father. Your father, Deo said, his voice dropping, was my greatest failure. He was meant to be my partner, but faith made him weak. So I gave his son purpose. I made you powerful. And when the time came, I turned that power into my weapon. Ben's throat tightened. You destroyed everything I loved. No, Deo said. I redefined it. Naomi stepped between them suddenly, tears in her eyes. Stop it. Both of you. Her voice cracked like lightning. This isn't about power anymore, it's madness. You've both lost too much already. For a moment, no one moved. Deo stared at her, a flicker of something, regret perhaps, crossing his face. Then he sighed. You've grown soft, Naomi. I warned you, emotions make you weak. Naomi's chin lifted. Then I'll be weak. Before anyone could react, she reached into her coat and pulled out a small black device. The same flash drive that had once belonged to Deo. Ben recognized it instantly. That's the Phase 5 drive. Naomi nodded. And it ends now. She slammed it into a laptop sitting on the glass table beside her. The screen flickered to life, displaying encrypted files and cascading lines of code. Then an upload bar appeared. Deo's eyes widened. What are you doing? Naomi's voice trembled, but her resolve was unshakable. Sending everything to the media, the police, the entire world. Every name, every document, every sin you tried to bury. Deo's voice turned venomous. Naomi. But she didn't stop. You said you wanted a legacy, father. Now you'll have one, a public one. Deo lunged toward her. Kalu fired. The room exploded into chaos. Bullets ripped through the air, glass shattering, alarms blaring as sparks flew from the ceiling. Ben dove for cover, grabbing Naomi and pulling her down behind the sofa as Deo's men returned fire. Stay down, he shouted. I can't, she gasped. If the upload stops, everything's lost. The progress bar on the screen climbed, 54%, 62%. Kalu ducked behind a column, reloading. We're pinned? Ben looked around desperately, and spotted the fire alarm switch near the bar. He sprinted for it, leaping over broken glass as bullets tore through the wall beside him. He slammed his hand on the lever. Water burst from the sprinklers, drenching everything in seconds. Sparks danced across the floor as electrical panels shorted. The smoke detectors wailed, disorienting everyone. Deo roared in frustration. Stop them. Ben slid back to Naomi, grabbing her by the shoulders. How long? 80%, she panted. Just hold them off. Kalu fired again, hitting one of Deo's guards. The man went down hard. The others hesitated as the room filled with smoke and flashing lights. Then Deo's voice thundered through the chaos. You think you can destroy me with data? You forget, I built this city's data. He raised his gun. Naomi froze. Ben saw it happen before he could move. He shoved her aside just as the shot rang out. The bullet tore through his shoulder. He fell, hitting the floor hard. Ben? Naomi screamed. Blood spread across his shirt. He clutched the wound, teeth clenched. Finish it, he groaned. Naomi turned back to the screen. The bar crawled toward 100%. Deo stormed forward, fury in his eyes. If I can't control it, he shouted, no one will. He yanked a small remote from his pocket and pressed a button. Instantly the entire building shuddered. Naomi's eyes widened. He rigged the house. Then get out. Kalu yelled. Now. But Naomi didn't move. She stayed by the laptop, tears streaming down her face. It has to finish. Deo lunged again, but this time Kalu was faster. He fired once. The bullet struck Deo squarely in the chest. The older man staggered, staring down at the wound as if it were an inconvenience. He looked at Ben, his voice breaking. You think you've won? You'll see, boy, empires don't die, they adapt. He fell backward into the spreading fire, his body swallowed by smoke. The upload beeped. 100%. Naomi let out a sob as Kalu dragged her and Ben toward the door. The ceiling cracked above them, flames roaring through the roof. They burst into the open air just as the entire glass mansion erupted behind them, fire and light tearing into the sky. Ben collapsed to the ground, coughing, bleeding, trembling. Naomi knelt beside him, pressing her hands against his wound. It's over, she whispered, voice breaking. It's finally over. Ben looked up at the burning house, the reflection of the flames dancing in his eyes. No, he said softly. It's just beginning. He pointed weakly toward the horizon, toward the rising sun over Lagos, where dozens of flashing lights appeared in the distance. Police cars, news drones, helicopters. Naomi followed his gaze, tears streaming down her face. What did we just start? Ben's lips curved into a tired, painful smile. The truth. The house burned behind them like a beacon, its flames reflected in the mirrored walls of a city built on secrets. And somewhere in the distance, beneath the roar of the helicopters, a phone rang. A single line of text appeared on an unseen screen in a dark control room miles away. Phase 6 authorized. The fire had turned the Lekki night into a second dawn. Flames curled up the shattered walls of the glass house, staining the lagoon red. The roar of distant sirens grew fainter as the last of the emergency vehicles sped away, leaving only the hiss of cooling metal and the wind off the water. Ben sat on the shore, wrapped in a gray blanket, his arm in a sling. Naomi sat beside him, silent, her white dress stained with soot. The air smelled of salt, smoke, and ending. But Ben's eyes weren't on the burning ruins. They were fixed on the horizon where the sun was climbing, slow and bright. Kalu approached, limping slightly, his uniform streaked with ash. The footage went viral overnight, he said. Half of Lagos has seen it by now. The federal task force is already rounding up every name from the files Naomi uploaded. Ben nodded faintly. Good. They're calling you the whistleblower billionaire, Kalu continued with a small grin. Public sympathy's turning. They know you were framed. Ben gave a dry laugh. Framed, ruined, and nearly buried. I suppose it's progress. But Kalu's expression sobered. There's something else. The tech team pulled metadata from the upload. It pinged 2 addresses, one in Abuja, the other, offshore. Ben frowned. Offshore. An island data farm registered under a shell company called Rebirth Consortium. Kalu crouched beside him. That's where the phrase Phase 6 came from. Someone accessed the files minutes after the upload went public, and duplicated everything. Naomi's eyes widened. Duplicated? You mean someone else has all of it? Kalu nodded grimly. Not just someone. Deo had a failsafe. Ben's stomach tightened. What kind of failsafe? The inspector handed him a small black flash drive sealed in evidence tape. We found this in the wreckage. It was connected to a backup router under the house. The inscription reads, Phase 6, Continuum. Our IT guys can't crack it. But it's transmitting, a low-frequency signal bouncing between servers across West Africa. Naomi's voice trembled. So, it's still running? Kalu's gaze shifted between them. Whatever Deo started, it's bigger than drugs or blackmail. He built a network designed to survive him. Ben turned the flash drive over in his hand. It was warm to the touch, faintly humming like it was alive. Continuum, he murmured. He always said his legacy would outlive him. This must be it. Naomi looked at him, fear flickering in her eyes. Ben, if that's true, then the man you thought you stopped isn't finished, Ben said quietly. 2 days later, Ben stood on the balcony of his new temporary office at Marina. The city below was alive again. Hawkers shouting, ferries crossing the lagoon, buses honking along the bridge. Lagos had moved on as it always did, swallowing tragedy with appetite. Inside, a team of investigators was combing through data from Deo's seized accounts. The files Naomi had released had detonated like a bomb. Several ministers had resigned, and Deo Akin's empire was now headline news worldwide. Yet something in Ben refused to rest. He couldn't forget that phrase, Phase 6, Continuum. Every night since the fire, he dreamed of Deo's voice, calm, unbroken, whispering from the dark, empires don't die, they adapt. He stared down at the flash drive on his desk. He'd been warned not to touch it, not to plug it into any device, but the silence gnawed at him. He needed to know what Deo had left behind. Naomi walked in quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. She placed one beside him. You're still thinking about it, she said softly. He nodded. It's like he's still here, waiting for me to finish what he started. Naomi sat beside him. Maybe that's what he wanted, to keep you chained to him even in death. Ben looked at her, weary but steady. I can't live in fear of his ghost. She hesitated, then touched his good hand. Then don't face it alone. He gave her a faint smile. You've already done enough. You risked everything to stop him. Her eyes glistened. Ben, I wasn't saving you. I was saving myself. My whole life I was my father's weapon. I needed to end it as much as you did. Ben nodded slowly. Then maybe we both deserve peace. He picked up the flash drive. Naomi frowned. Ben, wait. He slid it into the secure system console. The screen flickered, lines of code appearing rapidly. For a few seconds nothing happened. Then a black screen filled with white text. The continuum is live. Legacy Protocol, Odum. Authorization, Benjamin Odum. Naomi's breath caught. It's calling you by name. Ben's heart pounded. That's impossible. The words changed. You inherited my empire. You carry my design. Every account, every server, every asset, now yours. To rebuild or to destroy. A loading bar appeared. Naomi stared in disbelief. He transferred control to you? Ben scrolled through the interface. It showed offshore accounts, encrypted data centers, entire networks of shell companies. Deo had tied everything to Ben's identity. He wanted me to continue it, Ben whispered. Even in death he's trying to make me his successor. Naomi's voice trembled. So what will you do? Ben's face hardened. He reached for the keyboard. I'll finish what he started, but on my terms. He began typing, his fingers fast and sure. Line after line of code filled the screen. Naomi watched silently as he rerouted accounts, erased criminal records, and redirected every remaining fund into an anonymous global charity trust. When he was done, the screen blinked one last message. Continuum terminated. Legacy rewritten. Ben leaned back, breathing hard. It's over. Naomi's hand touched his shoulder gently. Now it's truly yours, your life, your name, your freedom. But before he could answer, the monitor flickered again. The interface rebooted, this time showing a live video feed. A small room. A dark silhouette sitting at a desk. Then the voice, slow, unmistakable, filled the speakers. Did you really think I'd let you end it that easily? Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. No, that can't be. The figure leaned forward, his face half-lit. It was Deo. Older. Scarred. But alive. Phase 6, he said, smiling faintly, was never about survival. It was about succession. I gave you my empire because I needed to see what you'd do with it. And now I know. Ben stood, fury surging through him. You're finished, Deo. The world knows who you are. Deo chuckled. The world only knows what I let it know. And now, Benjamin, so do you. The feed cut off abruptly. The screen went black. Ben stared at it, heart pounding. Naomi's voice was barely a whisper. He's still out there. Yes, Ben said quietly. But this time he's the one running. He turned off the monitor and looked out over Lagos. The sun had fully risen now, flooding the skyline with gold. Naomi stepped beside him. What will you do? Ben's voice was calm, resolute. Find him. End it, for good. She smiled faintly. Then I'm coming with you. He looked at her, then nodded. We started this together. We finish it together. The two stood in silence as the city stirred beneath them. Alive, chaotic, beautiful. A city rebuilt on truth and scars. And somewhere far across the sea, in a dark control room, a man watched them through another screen, his reflection merging with the Lagos sunrise. He smiled and whispered, Phase 7.